Good morning. Give everybody a chance to get their seats. Thank you for being here today at the Interim Joint Committee on Local Government this morning. We have a couple things to do before we get rolling here. First thing we're going to do is call the roll.
Senator Alvarado. Here. Senator Harper Angel. Senator McDaniel. Senator McGarvey. Senator Nemes.
Present.
Senator Schroeder. Senator Southworth. Senator Storm. Senator Thayer. Here. Senator Wheeler. Representative Bentley. Representative Bray. Representative Brown. Representative Dixon. Representative Donahue.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming. Representative Frazier Gordon. Representative Herron. Representative Huff. Representative Imes.
Here.
Representative Johnson. Here. Representative Koenig.
Here.
Representative Lockett.
Here.
Representative Marzian. Here. Representative Miller.
Present.
Representative Reed. Representative Roberts.
Here.
Representative Thomas.
Present.
Representative Meredith.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Mills.
I'm here. Very good. We have a quorum. Next thing we have is two sets of minutes. First is for the Interim Joint Committee on July 19th. We have a motion for approval on those. We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes for July 19th are approved. Then we have another set of minutes for the joint meeting on August the 25th. Is there a motion for those?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Very good. Thank you for that. All right, today we have two groups before us, and the first group is going to be the PVA group. If you want to come forward to the desk, those are going to testify, and we'll let you introduce yourselves. We have 3 or 4 maybe that are testifying, right? Thank y'all for being here and traveling to Frankfurt today. I'll let you get settled, and if y'all could go ahead and introduce yourselves, the floor is yours. Oh, and your mic is the green. If you push the button, the green dot comes on.
Okay, my name is Kathy Thompson. I am the director of state valuation, which was within the Office of Property Valuation, and we're here on behalf of the Department of Revenue to address what our role would be in this.
Good morning. My name is Tom Crawford. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Property Valuation within the Department of Revenue.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Lang, and I'm the Franklin County PVA.
Good morning. David O'Neill, Fayette County PVA.
As Kathy said, we've been requested to provide information about an online filing system for tangible personal property. An online system or filing system was a recommendation made a couple of years ago by the PVA Office Task Force, and earlier this year, Senate Bill 232, which authorized the development of an online filing system, was filed and passed in the Senate. So we're here now to give you more detailed information about what systems are now in place and the impact a modern online filing system would have on the taxpayers, the PVAs, and the Department of Revenue. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy for a short presentation.
Okay, basically what Tom said, our purpose here is just to address this online tangible personal property tax filing system and what department's role would be should this measure.
Could you pull your mic
law.
up closer to you maybe?
Yeah, sure. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Currently, with the systems we have, the Department of Revenue Office of Property Valuation is responsible under KRS 132-486 for administering a centralized ad valorem system. The current mainframe system was developed in 1988, and it provides the 120 property valuation administrator offices the ability to manually enter these tangible returns for their respective counties. The tax roll is currently produced at the state level and sent to the counties to maintain for retention purpose and for producing tax bills. So, an online filing system for tangible property would serve to allow taxpayers and their representatives to file these business personal property tax returns via an online portal. The returns filed online would then be available to export into a format allowing for an upload into each county's tax roll program. Currently, we have two systems. We have the tangible property tax system, and that is where the PVAs enter the returns that they receive by the due date of May 15th each year. And we have the omitted tax system, and that is basically assessments done by the Department of Revenue either through audit or through late filed returns, where these returns weren't sent to the property valuation offices by the due date. So our acronym is TPT, and that's for what the PVAs enter. Again, they're due by May 15th, and they're processed by the PVA offices. There are more than 101,000 returns manually entered in in the sum of all 120 PVA offices. So omitted, those are, again, returns filed after the due date of May 15th, and it's done by the Department of Revenue. There's about 10,200 returns processed annually. In fiscal year 21, there was 31.7 million collected in that system, with 17.9 million being distributed to local taxing jurisdictions. There's also audits that are done by another area within the Department of Revenue where any omissions get processed through the omitted system. So this is a picture of page 1 of the return, and basically the purpose of this is to show you the complexity of filing this return. There's multiple classifications. You have a Schedule A and a Schedule B, and a Schedule A is anything that's not manufacturing. Schedule B is property filed that is actively engaged in manufacturing. Then you have all those different line items at the below that is mostly covers inventory, some industrial revenue bonds, supplies, and construction work in process. So the classification for the property tax system for tangible or business personal property is pretty complex. You have a Schedule A and a Schedule B, and basically you have an index factor that's computed annually that's based upon replacement cost new less depreciation, and you have different classes, which is class 1 through 6, which utilizes whatever the useful life of the equipment would be. The factors are the same for both A and B. The difference in the tax rates for A is subject to a 45-cent rate plus all your local rates, and Schedule B is subject to a 15-cent state rate only. So basically, an online tangible system would replace this centralized mainframe system and will result in efficiencies for all parties. Nothing would really change because we're required by statute to maintain the system at the state level. The efficiencies would significantly reduce the amount of manual data entry and that would be needed, and eliminate duplication efforts. The tax rolls can be produced efficiently to assist local taxing jurisdictions in setting their tax rates, and it would provide cost savings concerning mailing and processing returns for all parties. Taxpayers wouldn't have to pay to mail the return. Currently, at the state level, we receive thousands of tax returns that are filed by the due date that we at the state level have to turn around and mail back to each PVA, which is, an added expense for postage. So some of the benefits of an electronic filing system would be convenience. You can file electronically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can have security because it can be transmitted over secure lines to ensure confidentiality. Accuracy. Electronic file tax returns have fewer errors than paper returns because you're going to take away the manual entry of it. The taxpayers could receive an acknowledgement of proof of filing. The taxpayers and authorized agents would have the ability to review prior year returns if filed electronically. And some of the basic information on the return, such as name and address, property location, taxing district, could be carried forward from year to year if electronically filed in the prior year. No. Sorry, missed the slide. Get back to it. I'm going to put it back. Okay. And just
She missed a slide.
there it comes. Okay. So then we have this omitted system, and that's what the Department of Revenue does. And basically, it's more of a complex system than the system that the PVAs enter because it has many more functions. So basically, the system is designed to process these omitted tangible returns and to bill for audits. It has automated functions in it now that will create a tax liability computation. That's one thing the other system does not do. It's basically a portal for the returns. The bills are done. I'm not touching it. Sorry. There's assessment notice preparation and billing. So therefore, all taxing jurisdictions' tax rates has to be entered into this system for both the state and local based on the classification. So then we have to distribute the monies that's collected to all the local taxing districts. So this portion of the system is a whole lot more complex than the one that we do for the tangible system. So, I mean, that's basically just a quick overview of our current systems and a little bit about what we foresee if there's an online portal to allow taxpayers the opportunity to file returns electronically.
Very good. Would the PVAs like to kind of testify and give your input on what a system like this, how it would help, or what kind of challenges you might see implementing this?
Yes, thank you. Currently here in Franklin County, my staff consists of 4 full-time employees and 2 part-time. During the time, as Kathy described, we start data entering probably mid-January through the end of May. Now, during that time, the first 2 weeks of May is probably our most important time period and busiest time. It's our open inspection period as well. So I have one full-time employee doing data entry all day long, usually from January through end of May, and another full-time employee or part-time, whatever I can spare, to check those numbers and owners' information. It's very time-consuming, proofreading them, communicating with the accountants, making sure we have the accurate numbers in the system, so that way the taxing jurisdictions can set the tax rates depending on what the numbers are in our system. So this would very much benefit the PVAs.
So my office has fully staffed is 18 full-time staff members, deputies, and a couple of part-timers. We do about 7,500 tangible tax returns a year, and it works out to be about 3/4 of a man year is the total investment in that. So it's about half the time of a full-timer and about half the time of one of our part-timers. Then some additional administrative overhead. Our customer service department does all the mail processing, but it's a fairly labor-intensive process. We do the mail sorting, processing it, unstapling everything, making sure that there aren't things stapled together, and then putting it in various categories. Then we do all the data entry. We proofread everything to look for errors. And then we also scan everything so that we have an electronic copy of it, and also file a paper copy. And then after we have that in the office for a couple years, we send that into an archive. So we can the numbers work out to we can do about between 4 and 5 returns per hour, and it costs us about $6.50 total. When I say us, I mean us out of local funds and staff salary and benefits, about $6.50 per return. And some of the things that we would benefit, right now we don't have, I'm a data guy. That's what my expertise and background is in. And I can't do any ad hoc queries on the tangible stuff to look for things like outliers and to help me find errors and do additional quality control that I would like to do. So that would be one big benefit from my standpoint that I would see from a better point of entry and database.
Very good. Co-Chair Meredith has a question.
Thank you all for the presentation. I think putting this in an online system makes sense for better tracking for everybody, ease of use for the folks who are filing these returns and everything else. I'm going to shift my questioning just a little bit, and Tom or Kathy, help me answer this if you can. When school districts get their report on revenue classifications, there are 4 different property fields that they get, is my understanding, which is the tangible personal, real estate, distilled spirits, and then public service. Right. Can you explain that public service piece to me a little bit and how that gets reported and those kinds of things?
Okay, the public service, we have 2, public service and centrally assessed. So there's a definition in the statute for public service, and it's primarily your utilities, your railroads, airlines, electric and gas companies. Then we have some centrally assessed that are like the telecoms, landfills, railroad car lines. They're still done by Frankfurt. So all that information, we get returns filed from these companies. Now the public service companies are the utilities, and they're done by a unit assessment, which means we're assessing the entire business. We look at income, stock and debt, cost approach, and we come up with a value. And then there has to be an allocation made if they have assets in and out of Kentucky. Then we come up with a Kentucky value. Once we have that done, we send the certification to the information to the taxpayers. We bill the state amount. And then once they're allowed 60 days to file a protest or to pay their bill. If they file a protest, they send us their claimed amount. If they pay their bill, that's their assessment. And then we certify to the county clerk the values where they get the bills produced locally. And they also certify to the city or independent school district should they do their own bill. The assessment amounts, because these returns are due in April 30th, some are due May 15th, and it's time to set your tax rate in July. So what we do is run an estimate based on the prior year of how those where they set their tax rates. So it's always a year behind, because you can't do, in a sense, an appraisal on a company to come up with that in that short a time to have that information available. So the prior year is used as the assessment for the current year.
So my reason for asking that question is we had a situation come up in one of my school districts this year where they received nothing for that category whatsoever. And we know we have companies that are operating inside the boundaries of our community, but they don't get anything showing them what that amount is or anything.
Okay, it should be on the certification.
Because when they get the report from the Department of Education, it only lists real and tangible. There's nothing for public service, and obviously we don't have distilled spirits, which makes sense, but we get nothing for that, according to the school board. And they've been trying to work through this. I know this is not what the presentation was about, but since you all were here today, this had popped up a month or so ago, and it was timely. So
we will have to look into it, because I don't know how the schools.
Which school district? Are we?
It's Edmonson County.
Okay.
They could be combining it in the tangible portion in with the numbers they're producing?
I know that they have one of the public service companies that we looked up has some real property in the community, and it's assessed under the real property roll, but it's nothing but the real property itself that they own, where they have the little buildings that they work out of. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crawford, could you give us a little bit of a breakdown? Because the presentation that we were given last year, or the description about the program, would be that there may be like a two-step process that we could to implement this. And could you talk about approximate cost and things? There may be some people here on A&R that might be interested in that.
Well, as you said, there are two components to the current system that we use, and Kathy mentioned them: the Tangible Property Tax System, TPT, the acronym, and then the Omitted Property Tax System, the OPT. And we've made some inquiries to try to get a good estimate for the cost from a vendor that does a lot of work with his local officials, with PVAs, sheriffs, and clerks. And we're still waiting to hear about what kind of estimate they would come up with for that type of system, at least on the front end. We think that's the less complicated end that would be less expensive to implement. Because on the back end with the omitted, there's so many other factors with local tax rates and distributions and that type of thing. We feel like it'd be more costly, but we don't know. We really don't have an estimate for you at this time. But we'd be glad to when we get that information, we will share it with you.
That would be great.
Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions for the PVAs before us today, or the Revenue Department? Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. Next group is our county clerks. Let everybody clear out of the way and let them move forward. County clerks are here today to just kind of give us an update on the recorded instrument electronic filing portal. If you recall, we've set this process in motion here to update our county court clerks' offices, and that's what they're here to report on as well. And we've got 3 clerks here to give us some real-time information on how things are going. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to just introduce yourself, and the floor will be yours.
I'm Jason Denny, the Anderson County Clerk and current president of the County Clerks Association.
Good morning. I'm Tabitha Clemens, County Clerk in Grant County and also the Treasurer of the County Clerks Association.
Chris Cockrell, Montgomery County Clerk and former KCCA President.
Good morning. I'm Debbie Donnelly, Hardin County Clerk. I am the first Vice President of the KCCA.
Welcome.
All right. So this morning we wanted to thank you for allowing us to appear and give you an update about Senate Bill 135. There's several members that we want to thank. Senate Bill 135 sets forth a plan for Kentucky to modernize the handling of our recorded instruments that are held in the county clerk's offices. The members that we want to particularly thank this morning is Representative Michael Meredith, and who co-chairs this committee, and his center counterpart, Jason Howe, who ably led the County Clerks Modernization Task Force this last interim. Several of you here today were members of that task force, and we thank each of you for your service and assistance in helping everyone achieve the goal of modernization for land records. We're going to update you on several different aspects of Senate Bill 135 today. Jason's going to start us off with the topic of the $10 permanent storage fee.
So the first topic, of course, is the permanent storage fee, and we're going to refer to this as the $10 fee. And what that $10 fee is a fee that's associated with every recorded document that we take in our office. Senate Bill 135 requires that county fiscal courts establish a separate account into which clerks will transfer the $10 fees that are collected. The funds are to accumulate in that account until the county clerk seeks payment for one of 5 categories of expenditures relating to the recorded instruments. Senate Bill 135 mandates that such payments shall be made by the county upon presentation of an invoice to the county treasurer without fiscal court approval. A few months ago, the auditor's office joined KCCA on a conference call to provide guidance on how they plan to audit that $10 fee. The auditor's office confirms to the clerks and treasurers that they interpret Senate Bill 135 consistent with clear statutory language not to require physical court approval before payment. The clerk only needs to present an invoice to the county treasurer, and the treasurer shall pay the invoice. The auditor's office also clarified a few important matters not directly addressed in legislation. While a clerk and fiscal courts could jointly decide to use a purchase order system if desired, the clerk is not required to use that. In addition, auditor's office confirmed that reoccurring payments do not need to be made on the fiscal court's standing orders, excuse me, because the fiscal court itself doesn't play a role in the approval or the disapproval of payments from the account. Finally, and perhaps most importantly to the fiscal courts, the auditor's office confirmed that they will only audit fiscal courts with regard to the $10 fee separate account for two reasons. First, whether the payment was made to the vendor in a timely manner after the clerk presents the invoice to the treasurer, and secondly, whether all of the $10 fees were properly deposited into that separate account, and whether expenditures were made in appropriate amounts based upon valid receipts, and no other monies were put into that account other than the $10 fees. It does not mean whether itself spending was appropriate. Only the clerks will be audited on that. Unfortunately, the auditor's office conference call took place after the Department of Local Government issued guidance calling for fiscal court approval before any payment could be made from the $10 fee separate account. DLG's incorrect guidance continues to create confusion despite the clear language of Senate Bill 135. The good news is, despite the confusion, in most counties, the new treatment of the $10 fee is being implemented as envisioned in Senate Bill 135. Counties have established separate accounts and treasurers are paying invoices, and they have a plan in place to accept invoices from county clerks upon request without fiscal court approval. Unfortunately, it has not worked as envisioned in several counties. A few examples. Several of our treasurers have told us that they don't understand why they are paying these bills when it is county clerk fees. Specifically, a few clerks in Western Kentucky are experiencing difficulties. In one county, the treasurer has refused to pay an invoice unless the county clerk goes before the fiscal court meeting to ask for payment. In another county, the fiscal court is causing a different problem for its clerk. They decide to reduce the operating budget based on an estimate of those $10 fees to be collected for that fee in that account. We would appreciate any help from legislators or any other stakeholders to help make sure that Senate Bill 135 is implemented correctly in all 120 counties. Thank you.
The second area we'd like to address is Kdla. And with that, we do have some good news. Communication between the Kdla and the Clerks Association about deadlines and upcoming opportunities has improved. And that's to their credit. They have done a better job at that. However, the bad news is the Kdla staff continues nitpicking grant applications and updating policies without informing clerks, as opposed to providing assistance to ensure that applications can be approved and that the money can be used as intended. Kdla is also turning down applications that should qualify, and unlike other agencies that we work with, Kdla staff refuses to come to our monthly trainings because generally they're working from home. For example, one example that we have is Debbie Donnelly was told that she was not eligible to receive funding to help with converting digital images to microfilming for permanent storage.
Can I explain that?
Sure, be glad.
When I filed for a grant, they told us that they were only taking 2014 and back. So I needed the present done. So I will be applying again, but that's the reason I was told that I was turned down.
That's one example. Another example is Jason Denny was able to get funding for microfilming conversion, but it took him 2 cycles to receive their approval. Another county was told that they could not use the Kdla funding to pay for digitization because of the modernization, not historical preservation. Additionally, we have 2 clerks who serve on the grant approval committee, forfeiting their ability to secure grants for their counties to serve the Commonwealth, but are met with hand-picked list of grants to review, but the staff have already selected the grants that they wanted awarded. Kdla is getting ready to issue the latest grant funding application, and our hope is that some of these issues will be worked out before the upcoming cycle. In addition, we hope that the Cabinet will conduct a wide search for Terry Manuel's successor as state librarian upon his upcoming retirement rather than simply appoint from within. This is a very specialized role in our government, and it requires a very broad search, and we would like to see that that would potentially produce a better candidate for that position.
So our first recording deadline from Senate Bill 135 is the implementation of recording land record documents electronically. So our title searchers, attorneys, and mortgage companies and all of those who submit documents to our office would be able to do that electronically to our offices and be able to have their documents recorded and returned to them electronically. Currently, approximately 56 counties offer e-recording. Approximately 115 of counties have contracts with vendors that offer software that accept e-recording, which should ease the adoption of the first deadline. And since 2020, well over 60,000 documents have been e-recorded in counties that are currently accepting e-recording. All of us sitting at this table are currently accepting e-recordings. Those of us with the portals, as well as our vendors who work with counties, county clerks throughout the Commonwealth, are working to answer any questions and otherwise position the counties who are not currently e-recording to meet the requirement of Senate Bill 135. There are several county clerks who are shadowing in our counties to see how e-recording works day to day to try to implement that in their own counties as that deadline is coming near. Our one concern that we do have about the deadline is establishing the e-recording portal is that the appropriation that was in the budget that recently approved the budget is to be paid only in the second year of the budget and during the biennium, which begins the day after the June 30th, 2023 deadline. So we do have a concern that for our smaller counties, they will not have the funding that's needed to be able to implement the first requirement of Senate Bill 135, which I know that the bill sponsors the last session when this was approved are well aware of. We do request that we push back the deadline by 6 months so that our counties that need extra assistance beyond the $10 fee and the potential for the Kdla money, especially the small counties, as I've already mentioned, would be able to meet the requirement of the bill. This 6-month delay should be sufficient without delaying any more of the mandated dates that are in Senate Bill 135. We're not asking that any of the other dates be moved, just the first date, so that the e-recording requirement can be met. In addition to pushing back the deadline, there's a few other minor technical changes that we may need to make as we move forward with some cleanup legislation. Not anything sweeping, just some minor details. Like with the development of Senate Bill 135, we will continue to work with the business stakeholders who were part of the coalition and with all of our legislators to meet and reach a consensus. In concluding, the last concern that we have is whether having 120 counties all rushing to convert millions of documents will overwhelm our vendors. In theory, Senate Bill 135's provision to protect the $10 storage fee, target the Kdla grant money for modernization, and the appropriation of the $25 million to cover the rest should address this issue, but only if the money is unlocked. And we are currently working with the Finance Cabinet. We've been having some meetings with them and some phone conversations in regards to how the RFP process will work. That's why it's very important for our fiscal courts and Kdla to follow the letter of and the spirit of Senate Bill 135 as we're moving forward. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have this morning.
Very good. Representative Meredith has a question.
Tabitha, Chris, Jason, been a pleasure Debbie, been a pleasure working with all of you all through this process. You mentioned 115 counties have contracts currently in process. Of the 5 remaining, kind of what is their status? Do we know where they're at?
We don't have an update exactly where each of them are. I think that they're all well aware of the deadline, and all concerned about the funding for their counties. So I think it's something that we're working towards. And as we get closer to knowing more about the RFP process with the $25 million, I think that that'll help shore up some information for them. I think that some are just nervous and scared about the process. Change is very difficult for some, and that's part of the education piece that we've been trying to work towards as an association. So having those e-recording vendors available at our conferences, having opportunities for them to see the product working in other counties has been a big deal and has really helped ease some nerves of some of the ones who haven't jumped on board in that 56 number just yet. So,
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Can you remind us where the grant funds for Kdla comes from?
Absolutely. So the grant funding from Kdla is solely by the e-recording or the recordings that we have in our office. There's $1 fee of each recording that we take in the county clerk's office. The county clerk's office is the only entity putting into that fund, which is why we really appreciated the swift move of the legislator to have 90% of that funding coming back to county clerks. It's just been very difficult to secure those grants. So $1 of each document that's recorded in our office ends up going into that Kdla fund.
So have y'all had kind of one-on-one conversations with Kdla, any of your associations, talking about the difficulties that you've had? Have you had that conversation?
We have.
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations, including the Kdla falls under the education cabinet. So we've even spoke with at the time she was the deputy secretary. Currently she's the secretary of the education cabinet, had meetings with her and Mr. Manuel in regards to the difficulties that we were experiencing with the grant process.
Just for time frame, this goes back even to 2020, 2021. So we've been having multiple conversations with very little results.
Communication has improved
Yes.
lately.
Any other questions for the clerks before us? Any questions? Very good.
Thank you.
Looks like y'all have answered all our questions. Thank you so much. All right. Any other items to come before us today? Our next meeting is going to be October 25th. If there's no other business, we are adjourned.